When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Dry Creek. User: Binbin77. Posted March 30th, 1997.
There was never any reason to drive out past the paper mill. Not unless you were lost or stupid or both. We were 16 and mostly the second. It was Cody's idea. It usually was. You ever hear of Dry Creek Church? He asked that summer afternoon, flicking a cigarette out of the window of his rust-eaten Ford. The place got shut down in the 60s after the preacher went nuts, burned the pulpit, and carved weird shit in the altar, said God was in the floorboards. I was in the back seat, sweating through my shirt, already regretting saying yes. Sounds like bullshit. Most good stories are, Cody said. But Emily said she saw something there last weekend, swears it called her name. Emily, riding shotgun, didn't laugh. She didn't even turn around, just stared across the pine trees lining the old logging road. It wasn't my imagination, she said. I heard it whisper, just once, but it knew who I was. We turned onto a dirt path so narrow the branches slapped both sides of the truck like they were trying to stop us. The radio had died 2 miles back, and the silence was starting to feel heavy, thick with anticipation, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. The church appeared like a wound in the woods. Peeling white clapboard, broken windows, half the steeple collapsed. It stood alone in a clearing that wasn't quite big enough for how much sky it seemed to suck in. There were no gravestones, just wild grass and a dry creek bed curled around the back. Cody killed the engine. Showtime. Inside, the air was wet and warm and smelled like rotting wood and cold ash. The pews were warped, pushed up at weird angles like something had crawled beneath them and gotten stuck. A charred Bible sat on the pulpit, coverless, pages bloated from years of storms and mold. And in the center of the altar, where a cross might have stood, was a hole, carved deep and ragged, like someone had hacked through the floor with a blade that didn't belong in a church. The edges were blackened and smooth, like it had been burned. No light touched it, not even when the sun was high overhead and pouring through the broken windows. Emily stepped up first, drawn like a moth. I wouldn't, I said. I just want to see, she whispered. I stayed by the doorway. Cody stood near the back pew, pulling a flask from his pocket, taking a slow sip like this was all a movie, and he was trying to look cool. But I saw the way he kept looking at the hole, like it was breathing. Emily leaned down. It's not a hole, she said. What do you mean? It's a stairwell. I took a few steps closer, and she was right. The darkness wasn't flat. It had depth, layers. I could make out 3, maybe 4 uneven stone steps descending into pure black. Then she said it, the thing I still hear in my dreams. It's saying your name. No, it's not, I said too fast. I swear it is, she said. Her voice had changed, quiet, soft, like she was hypnotized. It's saying Ben, over and over, but not like a whisper, like a prayer. I turned to Cody. We should go. He laughed, but it cracked halfway out. He's scared of a hole in the ground. I'm scared of whatever's under it. Emily took a step forward. I caught her wrist. Her skin felt cold, clammy, like something pulled from river water, and that's when it screamed. It wasn't loud. That's what made it worse. It was deep, low, and guttural, like a wet animal choking. It came from the hole from beneath us. Emily collapsed, just crumpled to the floor like her strings had been cut. Her eyes were open, staring, but she didn't speak. Cody ran to her. I backed away, trying to stay upright, trying not to look at the black mouth in the altar that had just spoken something alive. She's breathing, Cody said. She's awake, but I don't think she's here. He snapped his fingers in front of her face. Nothing. We need to carry her out, I said, now. But the door behind us slammed shut. No wind, no movement, just slam. Cody cursed and dropped his flask. It rolled to the altar, stopped right at the edge. We turned together. There was something rising. It wasn't fast. It didn't need to be. It moved like something ancient, something heavy, bone against stone, breathing in long, labored gasps. A hand appeared first, too long, too pale. The fingers tipped in something sharp that might have been bone, and then a second hand, and then a face. But it wasn't a face. There were eyes, or the idea of eyes, hollow depressions that shimmered like wet marble, and a mouth that wasn't a mouth but a vertical slit that opened up instead of down. No nose, no ears. Its skin was the color of candle wax, pulsing with slow veins like roots trying to grow. We stood frozen. Then Cody screamed and threw the nearest thing, a rotting hymnal, at it. The book didn't even hit. It vanished midair, like the space between us and the thing wasn't real. I grabbed Emily under the arms. Help me. Cody lunged and lifted her legs. She was lighter than she should have been, like her body was hollow. The thing watched us. Head tilted, that vertical mouth opening wider, and then I heard it, not out loud, in my head. Stay. I gritted my teeth and pulled harder. We made it to the door. I kicked it twice. On the third, it burst open and we stumbled out into the clearing, dragging Emily between us. The sky had changed. It was too dark for the time of day. The sun looked smeared, like something had dragged a dirty hand across it. The birds were gone. The wind was gone. Behind us, the church groaned. Cody turned back. He always turned back, and he stopped cold. The steeple was rebuilding itself. The boards floated into place like they were being lifted by invisible hands. The broken glass returned to the windows. The roof uncurled, and in the new steeple, a bell tolled once. Hollow and deep, like it was coming from inside your chest. We ran. We drove in silence, and Emily woke up an hour later in the back seat, coughing like she'd been underwater. She didn't remember the church. She didn't remember the hole. She didn't remember me. We never told her. We didn't speak to each other for a long time after that. Cody dropped out of school, and I heard he joined the army. Last I heard, he went AWOL in Germany. No one knows where he is now. As for me, I left Dry Creek, moved north, got married, and had a kid. But some nights, when the house is still and I close my eyes, I feel something shift in the walls. I hear breathing in the floors. I see a stairwell that shouldn't be there, just past the corner of the room, opening down into black. And I swear, something is watching.
Subject, the places she wasn't. User, BuddyBub87. Posted, October 24th, 1996.
I found the last photograph of him in a shoebox I kept meaning to throw out. It was from the spring carnival back in '81. Lights strung between the goalposts, the brass band still playing under the bleachers after the sun went down. He's standing with his arm around her, chin tilted like he knew the world would always find him in a crowd. Julie's laughing, head thrown back, eyes closed, the kind of laugh that makes other people smile because it sounds like relief. There's a paper crown on his head, and the caption on the back, my handwriting, too neat for me, says, "James and Julie, the real deal." I forgot I'd written that. I'd forgotten a lot. Until the call came a few weeks ago to let me know James had stopped breathing on a Wednesday. The coroner said it was an overdose. I don't know who told him it would quiet the noise. I just know he believed it until the very end. He'd believed so many things that she'd walk back into town one day, that if he hiked back to the campsite, he'd find the path he missed, that there was a way to rewind to that last morning before spring break when our biggest problem was whether his Chevy would make it up the grade without boiling over. I kept replaying the last time I saw him. He showed up at my apartment that winter wearing a frayed Letterman jacket from a team long gone and a pair of jeans so worn they'd gone soft. His hair had thinned early, but his face still had the ghost of the boy everyone thought would run the world. He said he wanted to get clean. Said the dope used to drown her out, turned down the volume, but lately she kept slipping through anyway. Reflections in the chrome of passing cars, her silhouette in the glass door of the A&P, the shape of her hand on the far side of a bus window. "I'm not scared," he told me. "I just can't do both. I can't love her and live." That was the last complete sentence we ever managed. After that, it was coffee and cigarettes and him sleeping on my couch with his boots still on. I took him to a clinic in the morning and he wouldn't let me come in. If you'd have asked anyone who knew him back in '81, none of this would have made sense. James was the kind of person who made the rest of us feel like we were renting space in his world. Co-captain of the basketball team, National Honor Society, the kid guidance counselors bragged about to younger classes. He could do anything, shoot three-pointers, quote poetry without smirking, work on his dad's Buick in the driveway until sunset. And then there was Julie. Just as sharp, just as unstoppable. She had a way of making even the principal fumble for words, and James treated her like she was the best thing he'd ever gotten away with. They were the couple you couldn't resent because they never forgot to be kind. They had a plan. Same colleges, same city, a June wedding after graduation. Everyone knew it. Spring break that year, a bunch of us decided to camp up at Cedar Hollow. We couldn't afford the beach, and the hollow was free if you didn't mind the mosquitoes. It had a squat ranger station, a cold, dark lake, and trails that looped through pines so thick the air smelled like Christmas. We pitched our tents in a half circle near the tree line, close enough to the dock that you could hear the boards creak when someone walked out at night. On the third afternoon, we came back from a hike, and Julie was gone. She'd been reading in a camp chair when we left. Her sweater was now folded over the back of it. Her sneakers were side by side in the pine needles. The paperback she'd been reading lay open, face down, like she'd just stepped away for a minute, but there were no footprints, no drag marks, no sign she'd gone toward the water or into the trees. We called her name. At first it was casual, almost teasing, then sharper, louder until our voices felt raw. The ranger called in the sheriff, and by dark, there were trucks on the dirt road, men in jackets with flashlights sweeping the ground. The next morning, there were dogs. By the afternoon, a helicopter hovered low over the lake, chopping the air into pieces. People from town came up with sandwiches and coffee. We walked the trail again and again, side by side, trying to cover every inch. James didn't say much. He stayed near the water, looking out like he was waiting for something to surface. By the end of the week, the search teams packed up. The news trucks left. The hollow emptied out except for us. And then we went home too. Her pillow was still in her tent, and it didn't smell like her anymore. James went through the motions. Graduation, a few months at college, but the shine was gone. By winter, he was back in town working odd jobs. Then came the stories. Someone saw him talking to the payphone outside the bowling alley at midnight. Someone else swore they'd seen him standing in the middle of the bridge in the rain, looking down at the river like he was listening for something. When I asked, he told me about seeing her in mirrors, in the glass of shop windows, in the turned-off television late at night, always just there, always just about to speak. It's like catching her reflection in the wrong place, he said. She's walking somewhere with purpose, and I'm the one who's out of place. He tried to live with it. Then he tried to make it stop. The drinking came first, then the pills, then whatever someone would hand him in a small bag for cash. For a while, it worked. He said the high made her go quiet, but in the end, she came back anyway. That winter, when he came to me, he told me she was in everything now. The chrome on a city bus, the shimmer above asphalt in the heat, the glass face of a clock in a bar. She's polite, mostly, he said. She doesn't want to scare me. She stands where she would stand if she were still here. The clinic took him, and I wrote my name on the intake form. But when they called him in, he didn't look back. For a week, I heard nothing. Then, nothing turned into months. Then, I heard the news. After the funeral, I drove up to Cedar Hollow. It was October, the air sharp with pine and wood smoke. The lake was low, the dock half pulled up for winter. I found the campsite without meaning to. The fire ring was still there, a ring of blackened stones like a mouth that had something to say. I stood at the spot where her chair had been and looked at the trail disappearing into the trees. For a second, I thought I saw her there, just the shape of her turning away, slipping between the pines. Then the wind came through and the space was empty again. I sat on the dock until the light went gold on the water. I told the lake what I remembered, the paper crown, the way she could run a mile and keep talking, the sound of their laughter carrying across the parking lot after a game. I said their names out loud because I was tired of whispering them. On the way back, I passed the bulletin board at the ranger station. There was a flyer for a volunteer search and rescue training. The date was last week. The corners were curling, the ink already fading. I don't know what he saw at the end. I don't know if her face came soft to him or like a shock. I used to think ghosts were one thing or another. You had them or you didn't, but now I think they're just the shape grief takes when it refuses to leave. James told me once, she's not mad, she's just late. She keeps trying to get back to wherever we were, and she keeps missing the turn. I couldn't tell him that forgetting and forgiving aren't the same thing, and that sometimes the only mercy we can give the dead is to keep remembering them until they shrink enough to carry. So I remember them on that spring night in '81, lights swaying above the football field, the band still playing under the bleachers, James with his arm around Julie. Both of them looking forward, the only direction they ever believed in.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.